Welcome to Literary Leap. In today's video, we will explore the anti-war poem, A Doctor's Journal Entry for August 6, 1945 by Vikram Seth. This powerful poem takes us back to the day of the Hiroshima bombing, seen through the eyes of a doctor who survived the disaster. We'll dive into his personal experiences, the shock of the sudden explosion, and the heartbreaking aftermath. In this poem, we'll uncover the emotional and physical impact of one of history's darkest moments. Through vivid imagery and personal emotions, Seth captures the immediate shock, confusion, and trauma faced by the survivors. The poem offers a poignant reminder of the catastrophic effects of war and the resilience of human spirit in the face of unimaginable suffering. Stay with me as we break it down line by line to better understand the depth of this tragedy. In these lines from Vikram Seth's poem, A Doctor's Journal Entry for August 6, 1945, the speaker, a doctor, is describing a peaceful morning before the bombing of Hiroshima. So let's break it down. The morning stretched calm, beautiful, and warm. The day starts off serene and pleasant. The words calm, beautiful, and warm emphasize a peaceful atmosphere. Sprawling half-clad, I gazed out at the form of shimmering leaves and shadows. The speaker, still partially dressed as half-clad, is lying down and observing the scene outside. He sees leaves that are shimmering or shining with a flickering or wavering light, and their shadows moving gently, likely due to the breeze. Suddenly, a strong flash, then another, startled me. This peaceful moment is suddenly interrupted by two bright flashes of light which surprise the speaker. These flashes are the start of the atomic bomb explosion. I saw the old stone lantern brightly lit. Magnesium flares? The flashes are so bright that the old stone lantern, maybe a decorative light fixture, appears to be glowing on its own. The speaker wonders if the flashes are magnesium flares, which are bright white lights produced by burning magnesium, and it is often used in photography or for signals, but these flashes are actually from the atomic bomb. This part of the poem contrasts the calm before the explosion with the sudden, violent disruption caused by the bomb, symbolizing how life can change in an instant. These lines capture the suddenness and confusion of the atomic blast, where the doctor is thrust into chaos with his surroundings and even his clothing violently ripped away. It shows the disorienting and devastating nature of the event. While I debated it, the roof, the walls, and as it seemed, the world collapsed in timber and debris. The speaker is momentarily confused or unsure about what is happening, so he debated it, as in thought about it or hesitated in making sense of the situation. And before he could fully react, the roof and walls of the house collapse. The destruction feels so overwhelming that it seems like the entire world is falling apart around him. The word collapsed is a hyperbole or an exaggeration. It shows the enormity of the destruction, making it seem as if the entire world is falling apart. Dust swirled around me in the garden now, and weird, my drawers and undershirt disappeared. Now, as the building collapses, a cloud of dust swirls around him. He finds himself outside in the garden, almost without realizing how he got there. Now, strangely, his drawers are old fashioned words meaning underpants and undershirt. They have vanished, likely blown away by the force of the explosion. This shows how powerful the blast was. The description of dust swirled is an imagery which creates an intense picture of the chaotic scene after the explosion. These lines show the physical damage the speaker has suffered and highlight the shock and numbness that can follow a traumatic event like the atomic bomb explosion. Despite the pain, he is more focused on understanding the situation than on his own injuries. A splinter jutted from my mangled thigh. The speaker notices that a sharp piece of wood or debris, that is splinter, is sticking out or jutting out of his severely injured or mangled thigh, showing the extent of his injuries after the explosion. My right side bled, my cheek was torn, and I dislodged detachedly a piece of glass. The speaker's right side is bleeding and his cheek has been cut. Despite these serious injuries, he calmly and almost without emotion detachedly removes a piece of glass from his body as if he is too shocked to feel pain or react fully, all the time wondering what has come to pass. While dealing with his injuries, he is still confused and trying to understand what has just happened. The suddenness of the bombing leaves him in disbelief and shock. Here we see or we notice, despite the severity of the situation, the speaker acts in a calm, detached manner which contrasts with the chaos and pain around him. Where was my wife? Alarmed, I gave a shout. Where are you, Yoko-san? My blood gushed out. After realizing the devastation around him, the speaker becomes worried about his wife, Yoko-san, and shouts out for her. At the same time, he notices that he is bleeding heavily, which makes the situation even more urgent. The artery in my neck? Scared for my life, I called out panic stricken to my wife. The speaker fears that his neck has been injured and that the bleeding might be from a vital artery. This thought terrifies him, and in a state of panic, he calls out to his wife again, desperately hoping she is safe. Pale, blood-stained, frightened, Yoko-san emerged, holding her elbow. Now Yoko-san, his wife, appears, but she is pale, covered in blood, and clearly afraid. She is also holding her elbow, suggesting she has been hurt as well. We'll be fine, I urged. Let's get out quickly. Now, despite the chaos and their injuries, the speaker tries to reassure his wife, telling her that they will be okay. He knows they need to leave the dangerous area immediately, so he urges her to move quickly. Once again, we see, despite the speaker's fear and injuries, he still tries to reassure his wife, showing his love and protective nature even in a life threatening situation. These lines highlight the overwhelming destruction and death that the speaker and his wife witness as they try to escape. The horror of the situation is amplified by the gruesome imagery and the unpredictable danger all around them, showing the full impact of the atomic bomb. Stumbling to the street, we fell, tripped by something at our feet. As the speaker and his wife try to escape, they lose their balance and stumble onto the street. They trip over something on the ground as they hurry away from the destruction. I gasped out when I saw it was a head. Excuse me, please excuse me. He was dead. To his horror, the speaker realizes they have tripped over a head. In his shock and disbelief, he apologizes to the dead man as if out of habit, showing how deeply disturbed or shocked he is. The man has been killed by the explosion. The word gasped means to take a quick, sharp breath due to shock or surprise. A gate had crushed him. There we stood afraid. The speaker explains that the man died because a gate had fallen on him. Both the speaker and his wife stand there, frozen in fear, overwhelmed by the scene of death and destruction. A house standing before us, tilted, swayed, toppled, and crashed. They see a nearby house that has been damaged. It is unstable, swaying and tilting before collapsing completely. The devastation around them is ongoing. Fire sprang up in the dust, spread by the wind. Now, as the house falls, a fire breaks out in the debris, and the wind quickly spreads the fire, adding to the chaos and danger. Fire sprang up in the dust is a personification as if the fire suddenly comes to life on its own. The vivid description of the head, the house collapsing, and the fire spreading paint a clear and disturbing picture of the devastation caused by the bomb. These lines convey the speaker's struggle to survive and care for others despite his injuries. He feels an obligation to help both himself and his hospital staff, but his physical weakness and thirst reveal the toll the disaster has taken on him. Despite his challenges, he slowly regains his strength, showing his resilience in the face of overwhelming devastation. It dawned on us we must get to the hospital, we needed aid. Dawned on means became clear and obvious. The speaker and his wife realized that they must go to the hospital because they are injured and in need of medical help. And I should help my staff too. Though this made sense to me then, I wonder how I could. The speaker remembers that he also has a duty to help his staff at the hospital. Even though it made sense to him at that time, he now wonders how he could think of helping others when he was in such a weakened and injured state. Parenthesis is used here to show the speaker's personal reflection in the lines, though this made sense to me then, I wonder how I could, to show his later disbelief at his own thoughts during the crisis. My legs gave way. I sat down on the ground. The speaker's legs became too weak to support him, and he collapses to the ground, overwhelmed by exhaustion and injury. Thirst seized me, but no water could be found. The speaker is extremely thirsty due to the trauma, and he cannot find any water to drink in the midst of the devastation. Thirst seized me gives the feeling as if thirst had physically grabbed hold of him. My breath was short, but bit by bit my strength seemed to revive and I got up at length. Now, although the speaker is short of breath and weak, he gradually starts to feel stronger, and after some time, he is able to stand up again. These lines emphasize the physical and emotional toll of the atomic bombing. The speaker is in a state of shock, unable to feel embarrassed or fully grasp the seriousness of his injuries. The kindness of the soldier provides some relief, but the speaker's concern for his wife shows his selflessness even as his own body struggles to keep going. I was still without clothes, but I felt no shame. This thought disturbed me somewhat, till I came upon a soldier standing silently. The speaker realizes he is still naked after the explosion, But surprisingly, he doesn't feel ashamed. The shock of the situation is so overwhelming that his usual sense of modesty seems insignificant. However, the thought of his nakedness briefly bothers him until he encounters a silent soldier nearby, who gave the towel round his neck to me. The soldier, without saying a word, gives the speaker the towel from around his neck to help him cover himself. This simple act of kindness provides some dignity and comfort to the speaker in his traumatic moment. My legs, stiff with dried blood, rebelled. I said to Yoko-san, she must go on ahead. The speaker's legs, which are covered in dried blood, are stiff and painful. He struggles to move and his legs seem to refuse to cooperate. That is, they rebelled. My legs rebelled is a personification as if they are actively resisting him. Realizing he can't walk easily, he tells his wife to continue ahead without him, showing his concern for her safety. Now, these lines reveal the speaker's inner turmoil as he is left alone in a terrifying situation. His wife's departure makes him feel isolated, and his weak body struggles to keep up with the urgency of his thoughts. This creates a powerful image of both emotional and physical helplessness in the face of disaster. She did not wish to, but in our distress, what choice had we? The speaker's wife, Yoko-san, didn't want to leave him behind, but given the desperate situation, they had no other option. Their distress, which means extreme worry or pain, and their need for survival forced her to move ahead for safety, even though it's painful for both of them. A dreadful loneliness came over me when she had gone. After the speaker's wife leaves, the speaker is overwhelmed by a deep feeling of loneliness. The emotional impact of being left alone during such a traumatic event intensifies his sense of isolation and fear. My mind ran at high speed. My body crept behind. The speaker's mind is racing with thoughts, probably of panic and survival, but his body is weak and slow, unable to keep up with his mental urgency. This highlights the contrast between his mental alertness and his physical exhaustion. My mind ran, my body crept behind, gives a human like quality to the speaker's mind and body, emphasizing the disconnect between his mental state and physical ability. The description of dreadful loneliness and the body moving slowly behind the mind paints a vivid picture of the speaker's emotional and physical exhaustion. These lines convey a haunting image of the aftermath of the bombing, illustrating the profound impact of trauma on individuals. The speaker's realization of their pain emphasizes the horror of their injuries and the fear that accompanies such suffering, capturing the essence of despair in the aftermath of the disaster. I saw the shadowy forms of the people. Some were ghosts, some scarecrows, all were wordless dumb. The speaker observes people around him, but they appear as vague, shadowy figures. Some look like ghosts, while others resemble scarecrows. The term wordless dumb suggests that these people are silent and unable to express themselves, possibly due to shock or trauma from the disaster. The poet uses metaphor here by comparing the people to ghosts and scarecrows, highlighting their lack of vitality and the extent of their suffering. Arms stretched straight out, shoulder to dangling hand. The people have their arms extended straight out, resembling the position of someone who is helpless or in pain. The description of shadowy forms and arms stretched straight out creates an intense picture of the suffering and confusion around the speaker. It took some time for me to understand. The speaker is initially confused about what he is witnessing, reflecting the shock of the situation. The friction on their burns caused so much pain. They feared to shave flesh against flesh again. The speaker now realizes that these individuals are suffering from burns, the friction of their injured skin against each other as they move close to one another, or even as their own arms rub against their torso, causes them immense pain. They are afraid to touch or come into contact with others because of their injuries. Chafe means to rub against something in a way that causes irritation or pain. These lines illustrate the chaos and despair following the bombing. The imagery of the blank parade and the naked woman and child captures the devastating impact of the disaster, highlighting the vulnerability of those affected. The speaker's dismay reflects his emotional response to witnessing such suffering, underscoring the tragedy of the human experience in the face of catastrophe. Those who could shuffled in a blank parade towards the hospital. The speaker observes people who are able to move slowly making their way to the hospital. Shuffled means to walk or move slowly and awkwardly. The term blank parade serves as a metaphor and suggests that these individuals are moving without purpose or awareness, almost like they are in a daze, reflecting the shock and the trauma they have experienced. It highlights the aimless and dazed state of the survivors. I saw dismayed a woman with a child stand in my path, both without clothes. The speaker feels a sense of dismay that is shock or distress when he sees a woman with a child in his path. This highlights the gravity of their situation, and they are also affected by the disaster. The woman and the child are naked, which emphasizes their vulnerability and the suddenness of their loss. Had they come back from the bath? Now, this is a rhetorical question and it suggests a contrast between the ordinary, that is, coming back from a bath, and the horrific reality they are facing. It implies that the speaker is trying to make sense of the situation as the woman and child's appearance is so surreal or strange that it seems almost absurd. It emphasizes the absurdity of their situation and the speaker's attempt to grasp the reality of their loss. These lines emphasize the confusion and vulnerability felt by the speaker and others in the wake of the bombing. The imagery of nudity and loss reflects the broader themes of trauma and disorientation, showcasing the profound impact of catastrophic events on human lives. I turned my gaze but was at a loss. The speaker looks away from the woman and child, feeling confused and unsure about what to make of the situation. He is at a loss, meaning his feelings of shock and helplessness make it difficult for him to understand what is happening around him. He is confused and cannot understand things clearly. That she should stand thus till I came across. He reflects on how unusual it is for the woman and child to be standing there in such a state. The phrase stand thus suggests that their situation, naked and exposed, is abnormal and troubling. A man without clothes, and now the thought arose. As he continues to observe his surroundings, the speaker sees another naked man. This prompts a realization about their shared experience of vulnerability and loss, that some strange thing had stripped us of our clothes. The speaker contemplates that some inexplicable event or force, may be or most likely referring to the atomic bombing, has caused everyone to lose their clothes, symbolizing their sudden loss of safety, dignity, and normalcy. The word strange highlights the surreal and horrific nature of the situation. The phrase, some strange thing had stripped us, serves as a metaphor for the traumatic experience that has taken away their sense of normalcy, dignity, and security. The imagery of nakedness evokes a sense of vulnerability and helplessness in the aftermath of the disaster. These lines powerfully convey the atmosphere of despair and shock in the aftermath of the bombing. The imagery of the old woman's suffering, combined with the pervasive silence, reflects the profound emotional impact of tragedy on individuals and communities, emphasizing the shared experience of loss and pain. The face of an old woman on the ground was marred with suffering, but she made no sound. The speaker describes seeing an elderly woman lying on the ground. She could be dead or maybe lying there injured and in pain. Her face shows signs of pain and distress, marred with suffering, but she is silent and does not express her agony vocally. This emphasizes the depth of her suffering and perhaps her shock or inability to react. Silence was common to us all. The speaker notes that silence has become a shared experience among all the survivors. The absence of sound suggests a heavy atmosphere filled with trauma and disbelief where words seem inadequate to express their suffering. I heard no cries of anguish or a single word. The speaker emphasizes the overwhelming silence around him, noting that there are no cries of anguish or severe mental or physical pain. There isn't even a word spoken by anyone. This silence underscores or highlights the enormity of the tragedy and the emotional paralysis that has affected everyone in the aftermath of the disaster. The use of silence and the lack of sound create a haunting effect that emphasizes the emotional desolation of the scene. The presence of suffering, marred with suffering, juxtaposed with silence, shows the profound impact of trauma, suggesting that sometimes pain is so great that it leaves people unable to speak or cry out. Thank you for joining me in this deep dive into Vikram Seth's powerful poem. As we've seen, it captures the haunting aftermath of a catastrophic event, revealing the profound silence and shared suffering of its survivors. This poignant reflection on human resilience invites us to consider our own responses to tragedy and the importance of empathy in times of crisis. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more literary explorations. On my channel, you'll also find MCQs and detailed questions and answers to help you prepare thoroughly for your exams. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.